Hey there, it's your TTS Radio. We present some of the most entertaining stories from Reddit, and elsewhere to you. Make sure to subscribe and enjoy the show. We have a driver here who has been advertising on Craigslist and has his girlfriend ride in the back seat and arranges specific pickups so she can give you a hand job during your trip. My friend told me about a couple who got into his car. They were slightly drunk talking nonsense to each other, so he didn't pay much attention, just kept driving and occasionally checking on them through the rearview mirror. Eventually the girl got quiet, so he checked in the mirror and didn't see her, and my innocent friend thought she was asleep and even laughed about it with the guy. Well, not long after that he passed a speed bump and heard the guy saying "oh shit." At the same time a gurgling sound was heard and a smell of booze plus sour filled up the whole car. So yeah, the girl was sucking off her boyfriend / whatever. The speed bump caused her to deep throat and vomit all over the back seat, and my poor friend still had to drive around with a vomit-smelling car. At least they rated him 5 stars. Not me, but a friend who also drives in my city picked up this drunk girl on her bachelorette at 8 p.m. on a Saturday night. She was going like 4 blocks but was so drunk she passed out the second she sat down. He pulls off and about 30 seconds later she shits in her sleep. She's wearing very short shorts, so it just falls out both sides. Being that she's passed the fuck out, he drives her to her hotel anyway, with the windows down trying not to vomit. When he gets there, she kinda wakes up, and in the process of getting out manages to smear shit on his back seat, on the back of the front seat, on the inside roof, on the outside roof, and on the door. She says sorry, throws him $20, and disappears. Uber gives him $250 to clean his car, charged to the shitter. The next day he gets an email from Uber saying she called them all pissed off because why did she have to pay a soilage charge when she already gave him $20 to get the car cleaned? Wasn't really NSFW, but on my second day doing Uber one of the clients was on house arrest, Dave. Dave was a cool guy. He wanted me to buy him some wine and smokes from the gas station. He even trusted me with his card plus PIN. When I get back I decide to just have a smoke with him. That turns into us doing Tai Chi in his backyard at 2 a.m. Really cool dude Dave was. Hope he turned his life around. Same friend, 3 occasions over a year. 1. Guy was drunk and pulled his pants off and started playing with himself. 2. Girl decided she was happy and pulled her top off for her other friend that wasn't so drunk to feel her up. Friend apparently flipped out. 3. Guy passed out drunk, so he checked and his pulse was low. Took him to the hospital, turned out the guy was overdosing on Xanax and alcohol, and he saved his life. I picked up a client who said he was on his way to the hospital to get something removed. It was very clear by his movements that he had something stuck in his ass. I asked if he needed an ambulance instead, but he said he didn't have insurance so he couldn't afford it. After I dropped him off and helped him in, I got back in the car and looked back to find a blood stain on the seat. The morals of the story are 1, if you're poor, don't shove things in your ass that can get stuck. 2. Never get light gray upholstery in your new car. I was in Santa Ana, California looking for a guy I was supposed to pick up. He lived in a large cul-de-sac with a small park in the center. It happened to be later in the evening when I went to pick him up. I go through the cul-de-sac once pretty slowly as I can't find his house. I decided to do a second round of the cul-de-sac, and when I get a quarter of the way through, 2 guys emerge from the park and one of them pulls out his pistol and asked, "What the fuck you doing in my neighborhood?" I decide to act really calm and just let him know that I'm with Uber and was unable to find a passenger and who I was looking for. He says, "Oh, you looking for random name? He's at the top of the cul-de-sac blue house." I thanked him for his help and cancelled on my rider. Fuck that shit. I don't drive for either of those companies, but I had a pretty bizarre fare once. I picked up a guy and a girl midday Saturday for a short ride, couple of km. The girl seemed drugged out of her mind and was wearing somewhat revealing clothing, so it was pretty clear they'd been partying the night before. While driving I picked up their conversation, which they were not even attempting to hide. It was pretty clear that the guy had a girlfriend who was not the girl in the car and that he had just hooked up with this girl. They were currently heading to his girlfriend to explain what had happened. To be clear, he is bringing the girl he was unfaithful with along to explain to his girlfriend that he just fucked her. He tipped well though. A mate of mine drives Grab, which is basically a Southeast Asian version of Uber. Once picked up a guy and 3 girls. Turned out the guy was a pimp and the girls were hookers, and the 4 were being tailed by the cops for illicit prostitution. And my friend was forced to involve. Long story short, they got stopped by the cops and my friend explained that it was his birthday and they were going to an orgy for his birthday. And no orgy for him. He did get a nice tip though, not a driver but a story told to me by a driver after dropping off his previous passengers. This was when I was at uni. I couldn't bother waiting for a bus home so I hired an Uber. Luckily there was a guy nearby dropping off a guy and a girl. I knew them, still FB friends with them. They got out and I got in. I said hi to them and chatted for a few seconds. They said they were going to study for a bit then go to the library to meet up with her boyfriend. I was tired so I just told them to have fun and I'd see them in class the next day. The driver overheard most of this talk and said he was surprised the girl had another boyfriend. I asked why and he said she and the guy who was just with her were being very flirty, touchy and kissing on the way over. I was gobsmacked a little, saying no, that's impossible. I laughed a bit and told him he must have imagined it. He said no, he saw them being very affectionate with each other. I'm just sitting back there shocked and not knowing what to say. He said, I'm sorry to tell this to you but your friend might be kind of a slut if she's cheating on a boyfriend. I'm still trying to process what I've been told. A little while later he drops me off at home. Before I get out I tell him, I'm sorry I seem a bit shocked but my friends, the guy and girl you just dropped off at the uni, their brother and sister. He was like, fuck off, you serious? Almost as shocked as I was. I wasn't completely sure whether what the driver told me that day was the truth or not. For a while I convinced myself he was bullshitting me and knew they were brother and sister, but I noticed other stuff afterwards that kinda confirmed it. Picked up a handful of drunk high school kids at 2 a.m, they just finished their graduation party and they were hammered. One of them threw up in the back, we had to stop on the side of the highway for him to get everything out of his system. He went behind the bush and did a number 2, but he didn't have any tissue. It was fucking disgusting the whole way. Puke and shit are a surprisingly nasty combination. I work for a company similar to Uber. Oftentimes you have to play therapist for drunk customers. They will lay out very personal details about their lives to you. One customer told me about how her ex-husband has been hospitalized several times due to complications from alcoholism, and that they told him that the next time he comes in, he'll likely die. She told me that she really hopes that the father will die before her 17-year-old son turns 18 because she doesn't want him to have the responsibility of having to decide to pull the plug. Another ride started with the customer asking if I played Overwatch, and within 5 minutes she was crying and telling me about her friend who committed suicide. One ride I couldn't find the window button. We drive the customers home in their own cars, so the customer reached over for it, very clearly moving her hand across my groin on the way. She also refused to sign her check unless she could write her number on my arm, and slapped my ass as I walked away. Another customer asked me for change, and I handed it to him as his other hand was on his dick, peeing in his front yard. Another customer, whose car interior was absolutely covered in cigarette ash and butts, told me about how her daughter recently got hooked on meth by her boyfriend, and how she hates black men because her black father left her as a child when he went to prison. A few months ago this lady came into my car whilst busily talking on her phone. Yay, you can't tell anyone on the team yet. No, I haven't told anyone at all. I was secretly eavesdropping, as I usually do, trying to figure out what kind of job she had. The details are kinda gruesome. The poor thing was lying there for a while after it happened because there was no one around. These bastards took everything from her and tried to steal her car, but they apparently ran over her and they just booked it. Her body was practically split in two under one of the wheels. It was only a couple hours later someone saw it and called us. She was still alive when we got there. Hey listen, I gotta go. We'll talk more soon. We had reached her destination, church. She got out of the car with a quick thank you. I did a little over 500 trips for Uber last year and the only thing remotely NSFW I experienced was this really hot girl asked me to zip up the back of her dress when I picked her up. Haha. That was cool, if it counts. 20 plus years ago I drove for a Sedan service. I picked up one of the Temptations and took him to get drugs and a hooker. It certainly wasn't safe for my work at the time, but everything worked out okay. He came out of a luxury resort and gave me a sketchy address. When we arrived, it was an abandoned convenience store, so he told me he was looking for some company. Yeah, I knew where to find that, and along the way, he said he was looking for some medicine, too, so we stopped in the ghetto and got him something to smoke. Could have been weed or crack or anything, I don't know, And I didn't ask. After being told fuck you, cop more than once, we found a pretty young lady of the evening. He asked where she's been all night. She said she's been right there waiting for him. She got in the car. They kissed and groped in the back seat on the way back to the resort, and he gave me a decent tip. Only ever Ubered once. Picked up a couple that had been making out as I pulled up, and the entire time driving she kept saying how they were gonna smash. Dude definitely got lucky that night. This one isn't really NSFW, but it's the reason why I stopped working for Uber. It's about 10:30 p.m. I get a request and accept it. It's a 20-something-year-old girl just getting off work at a retail clothing store. She needs a ride to her home, about 35 minutes outside the city limits. Cool, long ride equals more money. Get to her house, she gets out and I drive away. Now, I'm about 25 plus miles away from the city, so I don't really expect to get any hits out there. I'm about to head back in when I get another request. This one is another 30 minutes further outside the city limits. Maybe this person wants to go downtown. That's an hour-long ride equals $. I'm down. Start heading their way. It's a beautiful night, so I cruise the whole way with my windows down. Long, winding, narrow roads. No street lights for miles. Finally I come across the property. It's a ranch-style place. I turn in. Still no lights. Pitch black. I drive in for about 2 miles with no signs of a house. I'm doubting my GPS at this point. Oh well, I'm already this far. Keep going. Oh cool, a house. No lights on. Something doesn't seem right. I swing my car around to face the exit, leave my car in drive and rest my foot on the brake, just in case, and waited for a while. Nothing. Let me give the guy a call. He answers. Sounds confused. Hey, I'm your Uber driver, I'm outside. Take your time, I'm here whenever you're ready. Uber? I didn't request a ride. I'm at hashtag XXXXX Texas. Your address and information comes up on my app. Texas? I'm in Indiana. I've never been to Texas. Please don't charge me. Hangs up. In that moment, I felt the already pitch black night get darker. I turned down the radio. My window was still open, and so I started listening. You know that sound of a dirt road when somebody is walking on it? How it crunches and you can hear every step? Imagine that sound, but there are 2 sets of feet. And they're running. Getting louder? I look out my rear view mirror and the only light is from the red parking lights of my car. 2 men. All black clothes painted red by my brake lights. Sprinting. Getting closer. Getting louder? I slammed on the gas. My car threw pebbles and rocks at them as I semi-burned out, and I hauled ass as fast as I could out of that property. Got back on that winding road, followed it all the way to a well-lit gas station, shifted to park, and sat there, stunned. What just happened? I tried following up with Uber. Nothing really came of it. To this day I'll always have to wonder what happened that night. I've had a scary moment like this too. Driving down a dark road at night, suddenly in front of me I see 4 guys spread covering the whole width of the road. As I get closer, one appears to be holding a 3 to 4 foot chain. I slow down. But only so much, because there's no way in hell I'm stopping for them. The 2 in middle have to jump out of the way, but I'm not risking my safety for them. The scary thing is, a few people I've told this story to have said they'd have stopped not wanting to hurt others, but in my mind it's defensive driving in a sense. Not an Uber/Lyft driver, but I did drive for a taxi company. I had a fare where 2 drunk people who were making out in the back of my cab. This isn't unusual on its own, happens quite often, just gotta stop them before shit gets out of hand. Well, one of them decides to stop making out and says to me, "Don't tell anyone, okay?" Curious, I ask why. He responds, "We are cousins and we don't want our family to find out." Then they went back to making out again. I didn't once think they could have possibly been cousins. Never saw either people before or after. Could have just kept his mouth shut and I'd never have known. Why would you disclose that information to a stranger? One driver told me that one time this guy got in his Uber without putting in the destination. This guy was in his mid-40s, wearing an all-black suit and wearing sunglasses. Didn't take them off. He also had a briefcase that he put on his lap. Anyway, so he sits in the car and points forwards. So the driver takes off. They didn't speak the entire journey. It was about 40 minutes. To tell the driver where to go, the passenger just pointed left or right. Anyway, the driver tells me that he was shitting himself the entire time and genuinely thought he was going to die, but was too scared to stop. So finally they pull over at this really big old house that he described as the most mafia looking house I've ever fucking seen. The guy takes off his glasses, looks at the driver and says thank you very much. Turned out he just had a really big stutter and nothing else. My cousin was a Grab taxi driver, basically an Asian version of Uber. So in Thailand we have a TV show called Hormones, which is like Degrassi or Secret Life of an American Teenager, and they had a scene where kids were having sex in the backseat of a taxi. Apparently these kids wanted to try it out just like in the show. They were white BTW, so he found it funny that they would try it, and started making out and taking off items of clothing. My cousin said he stopped looking once they started talking off, but he overheard the girl getting frustrated that the guy couldn't get hard, so she put on her clothes and left the car furiously. Then the guy asked him to take him home. Not exactly NSFW, but still a crazy experience that happened to my brother. He is a Lyft driver, and one day he was picking up an nurse from work and taking her home. She lived kind of far away, so they needed to take the freeway to get to it. They start shooting the shit, and my brother starts talking about how when he was a baby he had open heart surgery at the same hospital that she works in. Funny enough, this nurse has been in the ER during many open heart surgeries, so she knows a lot about them. She starts talking about them, and eventually goes into pretty graphic detail about how the surgery is done. Now, my brother has this problem where he passes out very easy while discussing or seeing medical procedures. He's done it 3 times before, once where he watched himself get in 4, once from seeing the pin in his toe after he had foot surgery, and once while they were discussing how to put a catheter in during EMT training. He wanted to be a firefighter. So sure as shit, after a little bit of hearing about the surgery, the nurse notices the car veering off to the left, crossing over a lane. She looks over at my brother and sees him passed out cold behind the wheel. She starts screaming and the car ends up veering off into a ditch on the side of the freeway. The nurse, apparently forgets all her training, and just fucking books it once the car stops. Apparently the smell coming from the deployed airbags smelled like smoke to her and she thought the car was going to blow up. My brother and the nurse were both physically fine, but his car is completely totaled. So my dad is an Uber driver and he says that girls my age, I'm in my early 20s, will drunkenly try to make him go home with them all the time. One time there were 3 girls who drunkenly were singing to Taylor Swift and they made my dad record them singing the song and then they made him sing some of the lyrics. He showed me the clip of them singing and him singing later. It was hysterical. Then they invited him to go to the next bar with them, but he had to keep working. Also one time an Uber driver told me a girl tried to drunkenly make him hook up with her at her house, but he said no cause he's married. And when she got out of the car she gave him the middle finger and turned around and lifted up her mini skirt and flashed him 101. I guess Uber drivers get lots of ladies.